of the online network of independent learning professionals. Today we have Connie, I'm going to mess up your last name, Malamed. Connie Malamed. And as you can see, we're going to talk about a crash course in visual design. Just like always, as Connie goes through her presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat, and we'll get to all of those. We'll have a Q&A and panel discussion towards the end. For just a second, I'm going to switch over to Christy. And Christy, I'd love to know, I know that Connie's amazing, but I also would love to know why you wanted to have her speak to us.
So Connie is one of the e-learning blogs. Her blog is the E-Learning Coach, and it's one of the blogs that I've been reading for probably about as long as I've been blogging myself. And it just has so much. I love how much practical information. You can tell when you read it that Connie is in fact doing all of this work, just like we all are. That it all is from that real experience, and especially. Because Connie's expertise is in the visual design, and that's an area where I myself, like many of us, am not as strong, and I've been learning from it. So I own both of her books. I highly recommend her books and her blog. I think she just has a wealth of information to share, and I refer people to her blog. I think I've referred 3 people to her blog already this week. It's just one of those great resources. So. Connie's just an all-around great person too. We have referred work back and forth to each other, just like we do as a group in the Slack chat where we're all referring work to each other. Connie and I have done some of that ourselves,
right.
And so I think that that's also always appreciated. That she's good people.
I read Christy's blog too. I have to say, I love it. It's great.
Awesome. Well, blog love. So we'll switch over to you, Connie, and get started with Crash Course in Visual Design. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll jump right in.
Okay. Well, I've been doing this kind of work since before the internet, and we were doing everything on little floppy disks in DOS, and so things have definitely gotten a lot better. This course, Crash Course in Visual Design, is one I gave at ATDI recently, and I just thought maybe it would be fun to just go through a few of the things here. Definitely not all of it, because it takes an hour to go through. Let's see, I have a degree in art education and in instructional design, and when I got into the field, I noticed that a lot of people didn't understand what visual design was, and they thought that you had to be able to draw well, and that the whole aesthetic quality and aspect to learning hasn't really been promoted enough. And they're just starting to come out with more research in that area that's showing that aesthetics really do matter. So that's one of the reasons I've been promoting it so much. Also, it makes it easier to look at each other's work when it looks nice, right? Now, let me just give this the focus. Okay, there we go. Well, this is kind of just for fun. This is what I do at a presentation. I ask everyone, it's best to fill up as much as possible, a slide as much as possible, true or false? Come on, everybody. False. Right. Use as many different fonts as you can. What do you think? Right. Learners don't care whether a slide is well designed, true or false. So my point here is that a lot of you, most of you, already know some things about visual design. It's not like it's something that you don't know. You basically know a lot of the rules. It's just a matter of fine-tuning them. And this was the book I pulled a lot of this presentation from, and I pulled out, for you guys, I pulled out three main principles from it. But one of the things I like to start out talking about is so often our clients, and And if you're working for someone, the supervisors and managers don't really understand why you need to put time and money into the visual design. So I always encourage people to build your case for people. You can tell people that 50% of the brain's cortex is devoted to processing visual information. And the cortex is the outer layer of the brain. And that's a lot. 50% is devoted to processing visual information. So people are extremely visual. There are more brain resources devoted to vision than to any other sense. And that's really important. And this can help you build your case when you're trying to convince others that the visual design does matter, that you charge a little bit more, or that it's going to take a little bit longer because you are going to pay attention to the visual aspect. I mean, I've had people in my classes that have said, my boss won't let me use graphics. My boss will give me zero budget for that. And that's a phenomenon that is a result, most likely, of how much our brain is visual, is something called the picture superiority effect, which perhaps you've heard of. It means that we have a better memory for pictures than words. So if you were trying to learn this anatomy, in particular for concrete things, if you were trying to learn this anatomy without a diagram, it would be nearly impossible. So the combination of pictures and words is going to help make content and information stick in someone's memory much better, and it improves understanding. Here's an example. Would you rather read this about diamonds or look at this diagram about how diamonds are cut? Really is quite different. And one thing about text is that we process it serially. We have to read paragraph after paragraph, sentence after sentence. But when it comes to a graphic, we perceive it in parallel. We see the whole thing first. We look at it holistically, and then we start looking at each detail. So here's what the research says. It says visuals definitely capture attention, they aid recall, and they improve understanding. And I hope this gives you some ideas of how you can build a case for stressing the importance of visual design. Then there's the aesthetic experience, which causes a lot of positive emotions. And it's fun to hear from people. Maybe you can answer in chat if you don't want to unmute your mic. Either way is fine. What do you feel in your body? What do you feel in your emotions when you are having an aesthetic experience, when you're looking at beautiful architecture, a beautiful landscape, beautiful artwork? Can you answer, somebody says they feel peacefulness, they feel more relaxed, serene, inspired, beautiful. They often breathe deeper. Someone had a question about the last slide. Improve understanding. They feel transported. So as you look in the chat, you can see that aesthetics causes a positive experience. And they just started researching this for learning, and they say positive emotions are beneficial to learning, to problem solving, and to creative work, because when you breathe deeper, when you are inspired, when you are having these positive emotions that everyone listed in chat, it opens your mind. You're more flexible. And that's why learning and problem solving and creative work are better. Therefore, we really want to give our learners some type of aesthetic experience. I mean, it can even be, there's little illustrated people in Articulate Presenter. It doesn't have to be beautiful in the sense of fantastic artwork, but it has to be clean and appealing and pleasant to look at. I like to talk about the difference between design versus art, that design is utilitarian and it's an end in itself, and art is an end in itself. So they're really different, and design always is to communicate a message, but art is for self-expression. And design usually starts with assets like a lump of clay, a canvas. Sorry, I got that mixed up. Design starts with assets like photographs, logos, branding colors. And art starts with a blank canvas, like a lump of clay. Sorry, I got that backwards. My brain was transposed. And no matter how good your design is, unless it is effective, it doesn't work. So it has to be effective. You have to meet your communication goal in design. And in art, it's judged by its beauty or by its insights. I think it's important, and of course there's overlap between design and art, but I like to let people know this because a lot of people don't feel that they're artistic. But design is so much about communication that you don't have to be able to render to be able to improve your skills in design. This is my pep talk. So a good definition of visual design is that it's the organization of visuals and text in graphic space. And when you think about that, like, it's not so nebulous. All you need is visuals and text, and you need to know how to organize them well. And that's it. It's not that much of a mystery. So this normal presentation is 8 key points. I thought I'd run through 3 of them. Do we still have time? Is it okay, Patty? Yep, okay. So let's talk about aligning your design. Always align it with like 4 or 5 things. And here's what I recommend. Align it with your audience. If you are creating something for, let's see if I have another graphic here. No. If you're creating something for a conservative banking group, that's going to have a different look and feel and flavor than if you're creating something for perhaps baristas who are all in a band after, at night, right? And also the content affects how your design is going to look. So is this for forklift safety? Is it for finance? Are you teaching at a call center? So think about what the content is for. Also, every organization has its own flavor. Creating something for a hospital is going to visually look different than for a fast food company, usually. And I just wanted to show you some examples. These aren't the most amazing creative examples, but they show the difference in feel. So this is a fictitious title screen on leadership skills for managers. So I'm using a font or a typeface that's a little bit more formal. And I'm using blue because it's a kind of a power color, and I'm showing these buildings. And of course, you don't have to make yours look so typical, but I just want to contrast this with, imagine a course for skateboard designers, which if anyone knows of a skateboard design company, I'd be happy to give them a course. It's going to be very different. It's going to be active and dynamic. And what I was thinking about here was the typeface is going to be something a little wild and crazy. And it's on an angle because that makes it more dynamic and it creates a little bit of tension. So this would be another kind of title screen. And Madeline said she'd love to hear about title screens. And yeah, that's what I'm talking about now, how try to align not just your title screen, but the entire look and feel of a course to the audience, the content, and the flavor of the organization. And here's another example. Something organic, something neutral for a nutrition course, because we're thinking of nutrition as healthy, and we think of healthy as either green could work or neutral colors, something that projects healthiness. Yeah, that's great. We will have a panel discussion. So that was it for aligning your design. And the second key point is organizing your graphic space. And that's something, whether you went to school for instructional design or whether you are an accidental instructional designer, as Cami Bean likes to talk about, coin that term. Organizing graphic space is something that we don't really think about that much. And when we think about graphic space, imagine 3D space first. here's an office. Is this very appealing? Of course not. This is my office. Just joking. But something like this is very appealing. So that whole concept, we understand it in 3D space, so all you have to do is turn it into 2 dimensions, into graphic space, and think about how can you lay things out, how can you organize things so that they're neat, they're clean, and they're easy for people to perceive and process. And one aspect of it is white space, which is the area that's not occupied by visuals or text. So we have a violin here, and then everything surrounding it is the white space. And white space does not have to be white. It's the negative space. That's the other way people think about it. So if you take that white space, and people, through perception, have a tendency to think of whatever the object is as the foreground, and whatever the background is as the background, or whatever the white space is as the background. But if you flip that around and now try to look at the white as the foreground, that's a really good way to start thinking about white space, to start thinking about how every one of your slides is designed, or your job aids, or your manuals. If you bring up the white space mentally, just to think about it, it will help you design better, because now you can see it as an object, because space really is an object, just like visuals and text. One way to think about layout is symmetry and asymmetry. This is a symmetrical layout, and it's calming. Everything is in the center. Everything is pretty much a mirror image on the axis, on the horizontal and vertical axes. So when you want to make something symmetrical, it's fine to do. I use it a lot for title screens. It's very staid. It's not as dynamic as an asymmetrical layout. Now there's one that's asymmetrical. And these are images from my book. I'm sure Christy recognizes them. In an asymmetrical layout, things can or cannot be balanced, but they're certainly not mirror images of each other. So in this case, it's balanced because the image on the right, the man on the right, is balanced by the text on the left. But yet that dynamic curve and the fact that it is not the same on either side of the axis makes it shows some kind of movement and makes it exciting. So viewers do find an asymmetrical layout a little bit more interesting, because your eye is traveling. Both layouts are okay. You just have to think about what you want to show. I think you'll notice that there are a lot of book covers that often use a very symmetrical layout. So symmetrical is okay, asymmetrical is okay. Just the point is, make all these decisions with intention. Decide how you want it to look, and then do it with intention. Here's an asymmetrical layout that's not balanced, and it's from somebody else's presentation, Stephen Anderson, and it creates tension. And this slide kind of projects a certain angst, a certain tension, and so an asymmetrical, unbalanced layout is good. There are objects on the left, and it's completely blank. There's white space on the right, and it's purposefully, I believe, creating tension. So that's another type of asymmetrical. It's not balanced. One problem that you may find in your e-learning designs or slide designs, if you do stand-up training, are that you have these little clumps of white space all over the place. And it looks just a little bit cluttered. So one solution, and this is not the only solution, but one solution is to take your one graphic, pick out the one that you want to use the most, and just make it a full screen image. And that's really big on the web, those hero images, those giant images. So this is a way to make your work look a little bit more up to date. And then this is just the most simple design. I just pulled the color out of his apron and made a shape and put a circle, made a circle shape and put text on it, and bam, you can have a title screen. I'm not saying it's going to win awards, but it's decent looking and it's quick, because I know we don't have immense amounts of time to make every screen be a piece of artwork. So I've tried to come up with simple ways to make things look nice quickly. And here's another example, just using that same, sometimes I like to use the same image that's on the title screen on another screen because it just shows continuity and unity in the work. So by making a slightly transparent box for the text and putting, making it a little interactive, but yet you still see that it's the same screen. I think this looks nice and clean, but it's quick. And I wanted to just talk a little bit, I hope I'm not going over my time here. I just want to talk a little bit, I keep getting the thumbs up from Patty, about subtractive design, because it's such an awesome technique. It's about removing unnecessary elements up to the point where your design will break. So let's say you're looking at your design, you go, God, there's something wrong here. Well, just start eliminating things until you hit a point where I can't eliminate anymore. Because maybe you don't need that little flourish, and maybe you don't need that clip art character. And I'm going to show you something that I did for a course for real estate investment instructors. They gave me, this was one of their slides, and I did make it a little bit worse. It's really fun making bad slides for presentations. So the first thing I did was remove that distracting background image, because what you want to do is remove everything extraneous when you're doing subtractive design. And the most important point is this little chart in the foreground. That's the 4 quadrants of real estate investment. I don't really understand this, but I was just showing you the, you know how it goes. We don't understand half the things we make courses for. So one thing I did was take away that white block, because perhaps that wasn't necessary either. And then a lot of people insist on having a logo and a date at the bottom, and I just find that to be extraneous too. For example, when you're making internal training, people know where they are, and so you definitely don't need a logo on the screen. They know the company that they work for. And even when you're making external training, you can put the logo on the title screen and at the end. It's just extraneous visual cues that distract people from looking at what's most important. And I thought that this black at the top was a little bit, didn't really go with it. It kind of was incoherent, so I took that off. And here's an interesting thing. You don't have to follow trends, but there is a trend for flat design, and I'm sure you've heard about it and seen it. And so if you want to make things, there's nothing inherently wrong with using a bevel technique, but notice when you take it off, it just looks a little bit more modern. So what about consistency? I think that here we're trying to make it more consistent, and I'll continue. I'll show you, see if you think that this is consistent. And consistency is really important, and it does make a graphic more unified. I'm responding to someone's question, Kendra's question about what about consistency. It really does make it unified. So I think we have to walk a fine line, as we always do, between consistency and novelty. If things look too much the same, screen after screen after screen, I think people can get a little bit bored. So on the one hand, you want to mix it up, and on the other hand, you want to find things that are consistent. And I do have a whole chapter of that in my book, and I'll tell you the main point that I make is you can take a shape and stick with that shape throughout. It can be small, it can be large, but that's one way to make it consistent. And another way to make things consistent is to use the same palette throughout. So those are two really quick ways to make things consistent. So then I just took those colors because I thought they were a little bit ugly, and put some, I don't know what these look like on your monitor, but on my monitor, they kind of go together nicely. And then I started getting concerned that the title isn't standing out enough. So I put a little white behind it so that it would pop. And that was an example of using subtractive design and tweaking something a little bit here and there, like taking off the bevels and changing the colors to make it a little bit more pleasing. So there you go. Christy says she's been using this a lot. I don't remember where I heard about it. When I did hear about it, I fell in love with subtractive design. Okay, one more quickie, because I know a lot of people have this problem. You have too many bullets on the screen and you're not sure what to do. I have an article about this on my website, and of course, I've written 250 articles there, so I can't remember what's on there. I've been doing it for years. I'm sure anyone who's had a blog for a long time that has the same issue. So maybe these things are repeated, maybe they're not, maybe I have some other ideas there. So these are taken from my book, How to Be Happier, right? It's kind of an upbeat idea. So one of the easiest things you can do is put things in shapes. This takes 5 minutes, and I have not seen any research on this, but I just think that when someone sees it in little discrete objects, they're more likely to read it than when they have a bullet list, and perhaps it'll be more likely to stick in someone's brain. Thanks, Christy. And I was saying it's kind of a happy topic, so I thought, hey, instead of making it with consistent shapes, why not just like make kind of fun, make it look like fun? So depending on your topic, you know, doing a little overlap, some bright colors. And the colors help make it stick. I think so too, Betsy. So this is one approach. Put it in shapes. Another is put it in little bullets. I mean, make your icons bullets and then just write out the bullet in a shape. So this is still using a shape, but the bullets allow you to associate the text with an icon. So that's approach number 2, using icons with your shapes. Approach number 3 is allowing people to speak it. So putting it into a speech bubble. And you're welcome. And I like this because I think that as soon as we see people, we automatically start thinking of a story. And we all know that our brains are wired for not only graphics, but for stories too. So this is another way to do it. And finally, I think this might be the last one, I'm not sure. Maybe there's one more. I'll take a full screen graphic and put a slightly transparent, solid color and just list it. List the items and group them into something meaningful. Oh no, there's one more. Here's one more approach, and this is putting things in a panel. So this is a book about problems and problem analysis, and putting them in a little panel like this makes it a little bit more interesting. So that's, I think, 5 or 6 ways that you can transform bullet points into something visual. And I think that's the end. Just quick, how can you improve? You can raise your awareness by noticing design all around you. You can learn the principles of visual design and practice them, and just keep practicing and practicing and practicing. I keep getting better. I bet you keep getting better. And every year I can't stand looking at my previous work. You know, you just keep getting better and better. So that's it. Oh yeah, one thing about principles. Don't take them to heart. You can break the rules if you want to. Just know why. Do it with intention. Sometimes you have to break the rules. We're designers. We can break the rules. Okay, that's it. I just want to give you my contact information in case anybody wants to get in touch. All right.
Perfect. Thank you, Connie. That was awesome. Yeah, I really like a lot, doing it with intention. I mean, I think that was something that's just kind of all throughout, like just being intentional about how we're designing this. And I think anyone that doesn't have your book, I think that's just something that all of us could use for sure. So I'm interested to know, you know, in the group, how many of you design your own courses? I mean, do you design your own course? That's option A, or do you have like a graphic designer B, or is it a mix C? Yeah. For the most part, I design mine. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, C was getting another graphic designer? What was C?
A mix.
C was a mix.
Mix, okay.
Yeah, B is a graphic designer.
For people who have a graphic designer on a team, you know, that's just great. I'll do my own graphic design, but I will hire an illustrator because I'm not very good at illustration. And I love working with illustrators.
Yeah, and one of the things I think that some of us may fall into, I know I did when I first started designing, is that not having the confidence, and so it takes forever, and you're just struggling along. So one of the things that I even started doing, kind of, if it's a project that I think it needs to look really, really great, is I will kind of get a graphic designer to help a little bit with the template, just like in the beginning, and then I can take it from there, which is another way.
That's a great idea. And also what Carolina says is just knowing the design principles helps you work with them. Because if you can say to someone, I don't love this color harmony, or, why don't you pick the complementary color to do accents, or how do these two fonts go together? I'm not seeing the relationship, and then, because of course a designer takes shortcuts too. They might go back and go, oh, you're right, I'll get another font, or something like that. Or they can explain it to you and you'd understand. So it's cool.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it also just it definitely helps you get better as well. Because it's like, now when I'm designing something, like the one thing that you had that I really liked, I liked a lot of it, but you have a full screen image and then like a slightly transparent box, and then you can put your text on top of that. I use that all the time now because you can apply that in so many different ways. So then it's like, okay, now I've got that in my toolbox, and you just keep adding things to your toolbox.
Right.
This is Danny. I was going to say, I think the challenge, and all of us probably experience this as independent contractors and consultants, is that we work in our box sometimes, and we will get content that we don't know what to do with and need some creative ideas. And one thing that I would share that's helped our team is we meet every Friday for 30 minutes, and it's called Show Your Work, and it comes from Jane Bozarth's concept of show your work. And it's 30 minutes where it might be something we learned this week, but it also might be, hey, I've got this content and I don't know what to do with it. And sometimes I think when you've stared at the content for so long, you're like, I don't know what to do with this. And so we just use that time to share ideas. And so someone will bring their content or their slides and say, okay, I know this is not good, but I don't know what to do to make it better. And so I think that could be a concept that would be really, really helpful for this group too. If I'm and I know we get into like non-disclosures and proprietary content and that kind of thing, but I think if you can find that little network of people where you can bounce ideas off of, it can really make our learning better, and it only strengthens us as an instructional design group. As a discipline, right? Because every time somebody has better courses they're delivering, it just makes our industry stronger. So that might be an idea for this group. I know that you started kind of communities of practice, and I think a community sharing, Patty. But I think that's that same concept, is I've got this content, what could I do to these bullets to make them more interesting? And then you just take everyone's feedback and then go back to it. It might even spark a new idea. But that might be an option. We do it every Friday for 30 minutes. So
that's great.
Yeah.
I love that idea. And I think that's a really great option for, especially if you're, independent and you're by yourself. We've got a lot of people that are working solo, so they don't really have people that they can bounce ideas off with. So definitely that's something we could do in Slack. Again, like Danny had mentioned, check your agreements, but maybe if it's just a slide and it doesn't have, proprietary information on it, we could certainly just pop it up onto Slack and say, what would you guys change? What can I subtract, or, those type of things.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So Ant also has a question, so I'm going to switch it over to Ant for a moment.
Hi guys, I'm sorry, I was a little bit late to the presentation. I was watching a very exciting soccer match over here in the UK, so I have to apologise. But you'll all be happy to know. You'll all be happy to know England won, so it was definitely time not wasted. But I have a question for Connie. I'm not sure if you talked about this in your presentation, but I've been listening to your podcast for the last sort of year or so, and really enjoy that. I just wanted to find out a little bit more about that, how much time it takes you, what gave you the idea to start that, just talk briefly about that, unless you already went through that, so I apologize if you did.
No, I didn't. I mostly talked about visual design. I had a podcast called the Elearning Coach Podcast, if people haven't heard it, and I wanted to do, I'm a podcast junkie, and I've been wanting to do a podcast for maybe 5-6 years, and I was really uptight about my voice. You know how everyone hates the way their voice sounds? So I just kept starting, I wouldn't do it. And then one day I just said, screw it, I'm just going to do it. And here I am. I'm from Philadelphia, and I know people from Philadelphia often have a nasal accent. I haven't lived there in a long time. And I just said, well, I don't even care anymore, because it just seemed like our field really needed it. And I wish I could put one out once a week like most people do, but it takes me, I must spend perhaps 6 to 8 hours on it. And I just don't have the time, so I put one out every month. The other reason for doing it, besides the fact that our field needs it, is I love bringing in people from other fields. Some of the earlier podcasts especially had a woman who reviews scripts for Hollywood and wrote the book I'm Wired for Story, and a man who's an information graphic specialist, and people like that. I love having people from our field, and I love having professors on, but also people from the world of user experience, because I think our field is a little bit too insulated. And I like getting perspectives and tools from the other fields. So I guess those are my motivations. It's been really fun. I love doing it, but it just takes an insane amount of time.
It's really, really great.
When you're a freelancer, you're not working during that time. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, it's really great content, so keep it up, because I think a lot of people are enjoying it. So just another quick additional question: do you know how many people are listening to it? And a second part to that question is, have you found that sort of hosting a podcast in e-learning has given you any sort of additional work or additional opportunities to speak at events and that sort of thing?
I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that to me directly, that it's given me work, I found out about, well, maybe people say that they found out about me from the podcast, but I don't know if it ever got me any work. But I really feel like I'm making a long-lasting contribution to the field, and that's pretty fulfilling in itself. So far, there have been over 80,000 downloads. I can't get information about, it could be the same one person downloading it 80,000 times, but I'm guessing it's not.
That's amazing. Well done.
Thanks.
Awesome. And so the links to the podcast, a couple of people posted it as someone was asking. So that we're all on the same wavelength. So definitely check that out. That's cool. Madeline says that in her first class, your podcast was mentioned in her master's for instructional design. So that's cool.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, and Madeline, you had a question earlier about title screens. Are you hooked up to audio? If you are, maybe if you could tell us a little bit about what some issues were that you were having with creating those title screens.
Hi, Patty.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, Connie. So as I've told the group, I recently got Storyline after talking about it for some time. And so I've started my first project, and I'm really trying to focus now more on the design elements. And I'd like to say that I have a decent kind of eye for this. But then yesterday, I'd finished the whole project, but I wanted to work on my title page. I wanted something kind of, consistent, but engaging, a bit different. And it was actually the thing that challenged me the most, I think, with the whole project. And I found myself looking, at other examples online, trying to seek inspiration. So I guess when we're talking about visual design, if there are certain rules or if there are different rules that apply to the title screen, or how you had been mentioning kind of tips, if you had any to share.
Okay. I think the rules for the title screen and the inner slides, are the same, but I do spend more time on the title screen because that's the first thing that I'm trying to use to grab attention. So I usually want to try to make it pretty dynamic and interesting. I'm just trying to think if there's anything special that I do. I think it's more that I just spend more time on it. If there's my email address. Why don't you send me the title screen that you're working on, and I can try to give you some feedback on it. I'd be happy to do that. Okay?
Yeah, she says thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, and then also going forward, Madeline, if you need other help with other slides or things like that, put them on Slack if you want, and I'm sure people will tear it apart and build you up. All right, thank you for the answer to that. And then Sean has a question, so I'll turn it over to Sean. And also, really quick before Sean, I just want to say on the panel today, we've got Karen, Shannon, Danny, and Sean. So if anyone on the panel has any other questions or thoughts, and then definitely other people in the community, if you have questions, just like Madeline asked, definitely put them in the chat or let me know, and you can just speak them right out. So over to Sean.
Hey, Connie.
Hi.
I just had a question for you. I guess a lot of people in this group particularly design with Articulate. I know we've some Captivate users. And I guess they're freelancers working in instructional design, then developing in Articulate, and then publishing their courses. Just love to hear your opinion on that kind of model. Do you think we're getting saturated in that space, and should we be looking to other areas in e-learning, or where do you think we are now in the curve, I suppose, of supply and demand for that type of thing, and what's coming next?
Okay. So you're talking about the one-person model, one person doing it all? I mean, I don't really... Yeah? Is that what you said? Yeah. Okay. I do see it a lot. I don't know if it's getting saturated because the need keeps growing. I don't feel like, I mean, to answer that question, I'd really need the statistics. I don't feel like I have enough data to answer that. I'm gathering that you're concerned that perhaps it is that the field is getting too saturated. Is that your concern?
No, I'm not particularly concerned. I guess I'm particularly busy as well. I guess just from somebody that's kind of been there before and after a more extended period. From what you've seen before, do you see much of a change now, or is it just continuing to grow?
It's true. I have been on my own for maybe 12 years now, and it has changed in the sense that I would often now I am expected to do everything from start to finish, and prior to this, and it could change again, I would often work with a team, and I do see many more people going out on their own, but that also seems to be just in general a trend in the 21st century, where not just in our field, so many people are going out on their own because it makes sense in so many ways, and people are trying to create a lifestyle that is fulfilling to them. But it does seem like the field is also growing so much, and the need is so great. When I go give presentations, people often come up to me and say, our company's thinking of getting into e-learning. And so when you're immersed in it, you think that everyone is doing it, and there's still many companies who have not even gotten into technology-based training. And also, just one quick thing, I think that e-learning or one particular format is not the only way to go. I think we have to become problem solvers and provide to clients all kinds of solutions that might have nothing to do with training. It might have to do with that they need to send out emails, or they need to text message people, or, you know, it's the dissemination of information, and it's communication, and or maybe the software, you know, is really bad, and that's why they're having so many problems. So I think we can actually elevate ourselves to being consultants that are problem solvers, not just instructional designers.
Great. Yeah, no, great. Thank you.
Sure. I know I didn't really answer your question. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think a couple of other things that I just was wondering for the community is I really like, you know, a lot of the things that Connie had where, you know, you've got these bullets on the screen, there's different ways to take care of them. You know, what are some other things that you guys struggle with when you are, you know, if you're designing a course, you know, how do you get away from bullets? Do you use templates? If so, where do you get them from? So any thoughts from the panel or the community on any of those things?
Can I just talk since nobody's jumping in?
Yes, we'd love for you to talk, Christy.
So I will say, so for all that I still consider myself to not be great at visual design, I did have a project last year where I was coaching a team that was new to e-learning. Again, you know, they're doing their very first ones. And after seeing what that team created, I feel a lot better. Like it was, but it wasn't that like it, and it's like, you're right, I was creating stuff that looked like that 10 years ago, and look how far I've come. And it did actually make me, it did improve my self-efficacy. We'll go over the technical terms here, but it did make me feel like, okay, yeah, like the stuff that I've been reading in Connie's books and blogs and other sources, it works. It does actually, you know, make things work in it. And I knew it enough to be able to then tell them, okay, well, we need to pick one color scheme. You need to not have, you've actually picked a color scheme where you have 3 colors that are all the same saturation, and so you have no visual hierarchy. And I knew it well enough to explain the visual hierarchy, and Connie, I was thinking of you.
That's awesome.
But it was, and it did actually give me tools. But I do still struggle sometimes with, I still have things where I have designs that I look at and I'm like, wow, that totally sucks. And I have no idea why. Like, I don't like this and I'm not sure why. And I still sometimes kind of get stuck. And maybe the solution to that is to do kind of, you know, what Danny was talking about and what we've been talking about of like, maybe when I have one of those that gets stuck, I need to send it to, I need to put it in Slack and let you all look at it because maybe that's what I need to do. I do feel like sometimes with this improving visual design, I have to give myself permission to create some really awful designs first while I'm practicing in order to get past it. Like that I've had to give myself permission to be lousy at it while I'm learning it. And I think that that's, but I still get stuck sometimes. And I don't know if you've got any other tips, Connie, besides kind of what we've talked about of coming to the community. Is there anything else of, you know, if you look at it, if you're looking at one of these, you know, if you're looking at something that is the, why is my design bad? Mm-hmm. What else can you do for somebody who's, you know, less versed in this?
Well, I do have an article on the site. Sorry to keep referencing it, but I think it's 21 ways to get inspired from visuals, and Christy will find it. But,
yeah, I'm gonna go look it up.
But I can actually look. Oh, I don't need to share my screen anymore, so I can look for it too. Sorry about that. So have a design book collection, like even visual design books that are for, you know, most of them are geared towards marketing and advertising and making logos and doing branding, but they still have a lot of good stuff in them. Another is going to sites like Dribble, DRIBBBLE, and all the Carbon Made, all the designer portfolio sites. Go there and look through them, and sometimes that will like kick you into gear, and you go, oh wow, that's right, I could use black and red. Why didn't I think of that? You know, so you'll just see something that will inspire you. When I'm out and about, I'm always looking at posters and anything around me. If I'm on the subway in DC, I'm looking at the advertisements and I go, that's kind of a nice layout. I could use that in my course. It's just all around you. Packaging, it's just all, design is all around you. So look in the magazines, look at the way they do layout in magazines. So I think all of those things can really inspire you. So I hope that helps.
I would add too, I think there's sometimes that because we've all had projects like that where we know that it could be so much more visually engaging, but because you have to work within the corporate colors or the corporate look and feel, you're so locked in. And there are times when I've said to my team, yeah, it could be way better, but gosh, they really like it, so let's just call it good. I mean, especially when your client they're happy with it, and we know that we could be doing so many better things to it, but we don't have the time, or we don't have the resources, or we don't have the budget. And so if they're happy with it, that's our job, right? Is to satisfy our customers as part of it. So I get in that too, Christy, where you're like trying to balance and you're like, I know this could be better, but I may not have the time. And so you just call it what it is. And if they're happy, then you're happy with it. It doesn't mean you can go back and, maybe you can improve it after the project is over. Like we had a project where we did the project, we wanted to change some things to make it better and then use it as a portfolio item. And so you could always do that too. That's always an option, I think, as well. But I hear you. I so hear you. And you look at that project you did a year ago and you're like, oh, I would do that so differently today. But at the time, it met the need. So it is what it is.
Well, Julie mentions also going to Google Images and typing in a word just to see. I do that when I want to see how people express a concept, an abstract concept that I might not understand. So, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, definitely getting inspiration from, other people's work, it comes from everywhere, but I'm writing a book currently, and sometimes it's like I'm going to be talking about a topic and I just need some visuals to be able to kind of brainstorm with myself, like what direction do I want to take this? So that's very helpful. We've only got a few minutes left. So does anyone, it looks like Lucille has a question about how does audio fit into your design approach, or does it, assuming the visual design is done well, how and when should I still be using audio elements, or any tips on that?
Well, I kind of like to hear from everyone about audio. I've noticed that customers haven't been wanting it as much lately, that they would prefer reading. But on the other hand, it's nice to put in optional audio to make it accessible to people who are visually impaired. So I'm curious what other people have. So it fits into my design when it makes sense. And I tend to not use it nearly as much as I used to. I'm curious how that is for other people.
Yeah. Danny or Sean or Karen, do you guys have any thoughts on audio?
Yeah, it's interesting just that you say. I found the opposite, actually. I think my last few projects have all been looking for audio, and I would say even more so that there's more openness for professional narration. I don't know if it's because that's become more accessible now as well, with freelancers at home. They're doing, you don't need a studio anymore. But yeah, I would see it becoming more of a trend, at least in the type of work I'm doing.
So much for trends.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Most of our projects have audio. I think we've only had one or two that haven't had audio. And actually one of them wanted less audio because of budgetary reasons. And then once we delivered the course in the way that they had sort of scoped out, they felt we had left some audio out of a few screens and just made them readable screens, which wasn't my preference, but that's what they wanted. They came back and wanted us to record those screens. So I find the same thing. Audio is still very much needed in terms of, and especially for 508 compliance,
Right.
ADA compliance, we typically are being asked to put in audio as well.
There you go.
Yeah.
One thing I think is important, though, that someone had just mentioned is that professional narration sounds so much better. It's like day and night. People will often say for acting, for video, and for audio, I'm sure you've had clients that say, oh, no, we've got people here who can do it. And it just doesn't cut it. I'll do anything to get a professional narrator. They're so good.
Yeah, you definitely, it really changes the whole tone of the course. I mean, and also even if you have a professional narrator thinking about, okay, well, just like when you're thinking about images, you know, the skateboard versus the leadership program, when you have audio, you're also thinking about, is this a casual type of place? You know, like at Chipotle, we always were looking for someone that was upbeat and fun, whereas I've also worked at a university and it needs to be a little bit more academic sounding, you know, so it's interesting how that even changes.
Yeah, we actually have sort of our favorites, and I don't know if anybody else has used Voice 123, but once we've used Voice 123 to get the good voice more professional, and then we like them, we created a portfolio piece that just has all of our voice talent that we like to work with. That way when we bid projects, we know what their pricing structure is already. We know how much to budget, because that's what we run into is budgeting for audio is such, I don't know how else to say it, but a crapshoot. Like you have no idea. It's very difficult to know exactly how much it's going to cost. And voice talent for us is all over the board. Like some charge by minute, finished minute, some charge by word, some charge by page. So we've kind of got our favorite 8 sort of voice talent, and then we can better bid because we know what their pricing structure is. And they're professional, but still reasonably priced and great to work with, because there's a lot of them that are not easy to work with because they sort of have that Hollywood diva mentality. So
Yeah.
that's our 2 cents, my 2 cents. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, we're getting to the top of the hour, so our time with Connie is coming to an end, which makes me sad. But thank you so much, everyone. Let's thank Connie, chat love, clap, for joining us, spending your hour with us, putting together that presentation. Such good practical tips. I'm definitely going to be buying the book. And so we put links to the podcast and everything in, so you guys should definitely check that out. And Ant, are you there? Did you want to say something about a book club really quick?
Yeah, I'll just mention it quickly. Starting next Thursday after the session, directly after the session next week, we're gonna do another sort of 45-minute to an hour book club where we're going to read Win Without Pitching, which was all about Blair Enns' book, who was the guest a couple of weeks ago. So I've got quite a few people already in the list. I think there's about 10 of us so far. But if anybody else is keen to join, we're just going to read the book before the meeting. We've got a private Slack channel set up for ongoing conversation about it, and then we're just going to meet sort of once a week. Oh no, I think every other week we're going to meet. So every 2 weeks after the Thursday session. Just about the chapter, what we've learned, and just to kind of help, just let me know.
Thank you very much,
That's it
Ant.
from me.
So
Thanks.
If you need more information about the book club, it's on Slack. Just contact Ant and he'll get you signed up. So thanks everyone. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week, same time, same place.
Thank you. It was great to meet you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Love that,
Have a great
Christy.
weekend. Bye.
Somebody requested
Bye.
it, so I'm totally showing it for the person who privately requested that I show the book for. And
I love it.
Nice commercial for Connie's book. This is totally, and don't feel bad, Connie. I do this. I regularly am pulling books off the shelf while we're talking about.
That's true.
Good.
That's true.
Take care.
Happy birthday, Patty!
Happy
Thank
birthday.
you.
I bet
See
you won't have
guys.
anybody as cute as my daughter sing for you today, but you know, it'll be all right.
That was brilliant.